Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Satsang on a beautiful but very snowy Sunday afternoon where I am. Anyway, oh my goodness, I got so delayed that I didn't even clean up all the stuff behind me. Anyway. Yeah, we had a lot of snow here in the Seattle area over the last several days, and I guess we're going to be getting more. So, welcome to you all. So glad you're here. I'm going to kind of bring it up on my. Where are you? There we are. So I can watch the. People are beginning to join, so please let me know your name, where you are, where you're tuning in from. That's always very, very helpful, very meaningful to me, actually. I really love seeing it. Go to channel. No, that's not the one I want. I am just going to my own channel here so I can make sure I can see all of the questions and answers and all of the... Oh, there. We're live, and now I can see the chat. Yeah. There's Ava from Poland. Happily, Satsang time came. Happy for me, too. Yeah. Dr. Damien in Ohio. We have Ivilo in Bulgaria. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. This is really... I find satsang to be really quite a... I know how much meaning it's had in my life. Just the dialogue between a student and teacher with the mutual intent of discovering what's true. It's not just getting a better idea of yourself. It's not just getting a better self-image. All of that stuff's really good and very important. And we need things like that. Certainly we want to be more functional than dysfunctional. But discovering the truth is like a whole different level. It's one thing to affirm that you are abundant and, prosperous and lovable. It's another thing to know that it's an absolute truth. It's a fact. It's an eternal truth. Truth doesn't come and go. Truth doesn't become untrue the next day. A falsity never becomes the truth, and a truth never becomes a falsity. The truth of your being, who you really are, is not something that can change. Enlightenment, awakening, self-realization, it is the discovery of what's always been true, and the fact that you have been living out an illusion about yourself. You've been living out a version of yourself that wasn't actually true. It was believed to be true. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because whatever we believe to be true, we believe it into existence. We believe it into experience. We filter out everything that contradicts it. We amplify everything that affirms it. And so we literally experience our beliefs, even if those beliefs aren't true. But the essential ignorance we all suffer from, is thinking that what I'm experiencing is an objective fact, that is the truth. And it's not. It is simply a reflection of the dominant belief. If that dominant belief is dissolved, and the true nature of your existence, the truth of being, dawns on you, that is more than just raising your vibration. That is more than just coming to a different level of function. It's stepping out of all suffering. It's stepping out of all limitation. It's recognizing that who you really are is the vast, limitless consciousness of all being. The pursuing of truth is not like of spiritual truth, of existential truth, is not like coming to know some other kind of truth that we would, like a truth of mathematics or a truth of some particular circumstance or something. Those are all objective truths, which is simply, you're defining one thing in terms of something else. And that's all well and good. Yes, there's me and I'm perceiving it. But that whole model of coming to understand something by examining it or exploring it or watching it or measuring it completely falls apart with ourselves because you can't perceive yourself. That which is doing the perceiving can't turn around, and there's no distortion possible that allows you to actually see yourself. So the self-image you walk around with is not an image you've ever actually seen of yourself. It bears no resemblance to what in fact you are as the one who is seeing. And this is where the exploration becomes really interesting, because our mind doesn't help us here. The normal pattern of human reason and logic doesn't do it, which is all objectively oriented. This is why even science falls down when you're examining consciousness, because all science can do is examine functioning in the brain. But because that which is examining the function of the brain is consciousness and cannot be examined that way, the only real science, the only way to discover what is true is through pure subjective inquiry. That is, coming to know the subject, where the subject becomes the object of your search. You can only find what's true about you from within. You cannot get it from the outside. Never. It can't happen because from the outside will always be a perception of you, and never the full, unfiltered experience of you. Oh, we have Ursula from Madeira Island in Portugal. We have Sophie. Lovely to be here from the UK. Hi, Sophie. Remington. Hi, GP. Hello, Remington. We have Jonathan. Hello from Adelaide, Australia. Hello, Jonathan. Good to have you here. Emiliano from Sweden. We have Regine from Belgium. Hi. Hi to you. Sally Dusik from Adelaide. Hi, Sally. Patang. Hello, GP. I believe Patang is in Israel. Remington. Remington has a question. Did I bring my glasses up here? No, I didn't. Okay, sorry, folks. I may be squinting a little bit because as I'm reading the questions. Says, when you are embodying what you are before the eye, why? That's my question. Why? Well, as I was saying is kind of warming up the room, the discovery of your real nature, the absolute truth of your being, is why we do this. That's the why. That's why for doing any of it. It isn't because of the results you get. All of the stuff we do in politics and economics and business transactions and the like, or even all of the work we do pretty much in self-help, personal development, and much of the work, even in spirituality, is about ROI. It's about your return on investment. I'm going to do this and this is going to result. That's not what the seeking of the deepest spiritual truth is about. It's not about the results you get. It's about knowing what's true. It's about knowing what is absolutely, unchangingly, infallibly true. Now, to me, that's enough. It isn't about what it's going to get me, because if it's about what it's going to get me, the thing that I get is more important than the truth that brings it to me. And so many things fall under that heading. I mean, people want to go to heaven, right? Right? To know God, which is truth, for the sake of knowing God, because it's the ultimate, the absolute. isn't important. It's because I'm going to heaven, the streets paved with gold, and it's all going to be wonderful and everything. It's all about the reward. It almost the lust for heaven actually kills God. It makes it all about what I'm going to get out of it rather than what's true. Truth holds all the cards. It holds all the cards. It's up to us to harmonize with truth. The truth cannot harmonize with error. It can't harmonize with falsity. Right? So we have to abandon every belief we're holding that isn't true and completely harmonize and immerse ourselves in what is. And folks, that is the reward. I mean, I can talk about the bliss and relief and peace and stillness and all of that kind of stuff, but even those are secondary qualities. Ultimately, we pursue truth for truth's sake without any hope for something that it might deliver, for any kind of payoff. The spiritual path is not a business deal. It is not a transaction. It's really all or nothing. I want to know what's true, because only knowing what's true, only there can I rest. If I'm relying on something that's false, it's I've built on sand. It's going to shift. It's going to fall apart. It's going to go away. It's pretty much inevitable. Just kind of adjusting my screen here a little bit. So does that answer it for you, Remington? And so the more you discover that truth, the more you let it embody itself in the body, so that you are quite literally the living witness of the truth. You are the truth being lived. And that's its own reward. There isn't anything beyond that. Coming to understand the witnessing brings about a different awakening. Why? I'm not really sure what the question is there, Remington. Coming to understand the witnessing brings about a different awakening. There's only one kind of awakening, and that's the awakening to who you actually are. That's the only. There are not different flavors of it, right? The effect that it has, the way in which it's expressed in every life in which an awakening takes place, is different. Is dramatically different, but there's only one kind. We all discover who we are, and that who we are, we all discover, is exactly the same self, the same soul. The practice of becoming the pure, undiluted witness, where you see that witnessing is always happening, and you're sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into the witnessing until there's nothing but witnessing. There's no witness. The witness disappears. Everything that could possibly be witnessed simply disappears, and there's pure witnessing. That is awakening. And coming to understand the witnessing. That's as best I can do with the question, because I think that's what you're getting at. Nota Bean or Benet, hi from Vancouver. Hi to you. Ishka, beautiful Sunday again here in Louisiana. Happy New Year. Yeah, right. Happy Year of the Boar. That's right. It is Chinese New Year. Some say boar, which I like better than pig, because pig has, in our culture, has a much different representation. But it actually means just very earthy and real, and just down there in the muck, which is where we all are anyway, right? Patang says, I am formless, objectless, infinite, and timeless. I am the being that I am, pure light, true love. Yes, absolutely true. Now, let that sink in differently. The recognition of that is a start. And unless it's completely blown the doors off of all your self-images and self-concepts, just keep going with that. Notice how and there's habits of mind, there's a momentum to, and our patterns of thought that are in utter denial of that say you are not formless, you are this body, you are not objectless, you are a person, you have these attitudes, you started at this point, you stopped at that point. Notice that all of those are simply habits of thought. None of them are absolutely true. None of them are the truth. And once you see that, this truth can begin to seep in more deeply, that I really am formless. Ponder that. What does that mean to be formless? It means that I'm not this body. But it means I have no boundaries whatsoever. But it also means if I have no boundaries, then neither do you, which means that we're the same formless being. I mean, keep going with this. Don't stop. You're doing great, but keep going with this. Just see if you can get to the pure sense of I am with nothing else mixed in. And then let that completely take over your life, which it will. I mean, it is anyway. It is anyway. That is actually what is moving everything in your life. Is this principle, this spiritual essence, this substance is what's moving everything in your life. So we might as well surrender to it. But the surrender to that, to the totality of that, can actually take some time. So just keep going, Patan. Beautiful. Samuel Cohen says, hi from Israel. Hello, Samuel. Good to have you. Klesu, hi from Powell River. I'm not sure where that is. Katie, hi from London. Hi, Katie. David Smith, hi from North Korea. I don't think I've ever had anyone from North Korea before. Have you been here before, David, or you new? I'm trying to remember. Maybe there was one, or somebody from North or South Korea. But in any case, in any event, I'm very, very glad you're here. It's wonderful. Seeking Truth. Hello, GP. How can I stay as being awareness at all times? It seems a lot of mental thought is needed in doing so. It seems hard to do. It's very funny. I was in Las Vegas last weekend. I did a couple of events, and it almost became comical how many times that question got asked. And really, it's the essence of it. You can't maintain being awareness if you see it as a mental activity, as something that you think through and do, as a process, as a practice, right? It is a recognition that whether your mind is in agreement or not, whether there's doubt or not, whether there's chaos or not, it's the truth. This is where your faith gets anchored. This is where it becomes a matter of faith and not necessarily of sight. And all faith is not a belief system. It doesn't mean I have a particular set of beliefs. What faith is, perceiving something that is true, even if the evidence contradicts it. You believe more in the truth that you are seeing than in whatever's happening around you. Because what's happening around you is always a function of belief. And we've had beliefs that have been in place for a long time. They're going to continue to function. Just because you suddenly have the realization of who you are doesn't mean that all of that habit energy is going to go away. Buddha talked about it. Even the habit energy, even at some of the highest levels of achievement, it's still there. You can walk right up to the door of awakening, of full enlightenment, and that habit energy is still going to be there. You can even experience enlightenment, and the habit energy is still there. So it becomes a matter of vigilance, but the vigilance isn't burdensome. If you're feeling burdened by it, don't do it. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to help you. It's just going to kind of drag you down. This is the truth of you, right? And it's the truth. Even when you are completely wrapped around the axle, up to your eyeballs in the swamp. no matter what's going on in your life, it does not change the truth of your being. And all you need to do, the only thing you have to do, is realize that no matter what the chaos is, you are perceiving it. Simple as that. If you are perceiving it, if you are aware of it, then you are the awareness of it. And that's all it takes. I'm aware of it. I'm the awareness of it. Whatever it is, whether it be an old habit, whether it be a trying circumstance, or even be an ecstatic circumstance, none of that can take place if you are not aware. And so all of it, everything you experience, good, bad, or indifferent, is facilitated and made possible by awareness, brought to you by awareness, right? Because without that, what would you experience? Nothing. It would be oblivion. So having any experience whatsoever is evidence that you are the awareness to which it is all appearing. So now it's not a fight with it, of trying, I'm awareness. If the thought, I'm not awareness, I don't get it, I'm totally confused, is there, it's occurring to awareness, isn't it? So you're never not that. This is the sweet truth. You're never not that. Awareness is not a state you have to hold on to. You don't have to hold on to your awareness, do you? I mean, right now, are you not conscious of me speaking? Are you not hearing my words? Is that consciousness of hearing my words, is that something you have to make happen? Is there like a key you have to turn on, right? Boom, 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 a lawnmower you have to start or something? It just happens. It's always happening. You are that. So it is effortless. Even the feeling of it being an effort, like it's a process you have to go through, is appearing to the awareness. That's all you have to do. Just keep reminding yourself that to know who you are does not mean you have a particular type of experience. It means that you are capable of being aware of any experience. Now, the deeper that goes, we find that the awareness does not actually have a preference for what it experiences. We do, right? There's a sense of, I have this preference, I'd rather have this than that. That's all well and good, but notice how even a preference for this over that is appearing in awareness. Awareness is even more fundamental than that. The nature of awareness is pure allowing. Pure allowing, right? And of course, you know it is, because by the time something comes up in your life that you don't want to be there, it's already been let in by awareness. You're already aware. So the awareness that is allowing everything in has no preference for what it gets in. What gets in. It's just like, your eye doesn't not see a picture of something really, really ugly or awful. It doesn't say, I'm not going to see that. If the light hits it, and it gets. Awareness is like that. It's open. It's spacious. And the more you see that you are that awareness and that you have no preference, the less suffering there is. Because all of the suffering is, I want this, I don't want that. Boom, there's the conflict. This is not okay. This shouldn't be happening. Why? Because I want this. Now, stop for a second. The preference and the I, the one who holds the preference, are both being perceived by that same awareness. And are you not perceiving both? And if you are the what is perceiving both, then you are that awareness. You can't go any deeper than that. You can't go any further than that. There's not some other, 10th dimension being. This is it. This is as far as anyone can go. I don't care where you are. I don't care what form you are. This is as far as you can go. The sense of being aware is as fundamental as it gets. That's where the buck stops. And that's who you are. Whatever that awareness, the qualities of awareness are you. And so the practice, for lack of a better term, is simply to recognize that no matter what happens, and no matter what the reaction is to what happens, and no matter what the preference is about what happens, all of it is being perceived by exactly the same thing. And that which is perceiving it has no preference. that which is perceiving it, the pure awareness, is not affected by it. It's not damaged by it. It's not marked or scored by it. Everything just moves through it, and nothing sticks. Is that helpful for you? Seeking truth. Does that cover it for you, my friend? River of Wellness. Hi from the UK. Hello, hello. The question last week on low self-esteem. GP, when you are giving love, what are we loving? Is it the program, inner child, or ego? Not sure what to do here. Much love, Julie. Hi, Julie. Well, I like to do it. Low self-esteem. The only way you can have a sense of low self-esteem is that the image you're holding of yourself is not who you are. That simple. You have been trained to hold a vision of yourself as somebody who's limited, finite, stuck, some bad qualities, maybe some good ones, probably more bad ones, and really doesn't deserve anything, isn't good enough, and that self-image will kind of contract in itself and say, I have low self-esteem. Well, who's that I? It's not the self-esteem, the feeling of that I question. Nor do I criticize it when somebody does some exercises to increase their self-esteem. It can really work. And they can work because the lack of self-esteem isn't a fact, it's a learned behavior. So you can unlearn it and change it. But if you want to change it in the most powerful and permanent way, you discover that the I you think you are isn't who you are. And the entire basket of difficulties, including low self-esteem, is immediately gone, because that belongs to an image you're holding of yourself and not actually belongs to you. You have identified with the person, the sense of limitation, the sense of not being enough, the sense of being a form, the sense of being in lack, the sense of being this struggling little person in this big cold universe. Those are all deeply held images ingrained in the nervous system as reactive patterns. None of them are true. They are an image. The person is only a thought. It is not an actual thing. It feels as if it's an actual thing because what we believe, we experience. Whatever is believed is experienced. That's the power of consciousness. Whatever is grasped as and called the truth will be experienced as if it is. It will be the filter through which the world is seen. It will be the lens through which it's seen. But no matter what is seen through that lens, you're not on that side of the lens. You're the one looking through it. You want to see things as they actually are? Take away the lens. You don't have to fix your seeing. Your seeing's perfect. You simply have to remove from it all the obstructions that made it see things that weren't really there. And the essence of those was the person, the sense of being a person. Believe me, the infinite does not have self-esteem problems. Pure awareness is not beating itself up. That's all the habit energy of the mind identified with something that is not you. So, GP, when you are giving love, what are we loving? Love is your nature. It is not a quality you possess and you can give or not. It is what you are. Another word for pure awareness is love. You might think of it as love as the fragrance, the perfume of awareness. I mean, what is love but unconditional acceptance? And what is more unconditionally accepting than awareness? Everything is welcome. Nothing is left out. It has no preferences. That is the model of love. That's pure love. Accepting things exactly as they are and then seeing them as they really are. When you see everything and everyone as they are, you will see God everywhere. And the Sufi saying, wherever the eye lights, it sees the face of God. It's not. If you think that you're looking at a person, right? You're going to see a person. You're going to see a limited thing. But take out that veil and you will see God everywhere. You will see the self, the one being, everywhere. At that point, when we say, what are you loving? Is it the program, the inner child, the ego? Not sure what to do here. You are loving, first and foremost, the reality of yourself and the reality of whoever it is you're perceiving. And that love is just going out like light. The sun doesn't try to figure out who it's illuminating. It just sends out the light, and it illuminates whoever is there and open and willing to take it in. Your love is like that. In the process of working with people and healing and that sort of stuff, there's stuff that can come up about inner child, wounded parts of ourselves, which is really what the inner child is really a traumatic energy that happened when you were so young that some part of you got stultified, and stuck, and wasn't able to actually evolve and grow the way it should. That's the wounded, you could call it inner child. It's a kind of it's an old, very young energy that happens. And you can love the one that's experiencing it and provide an environment that's so safe that energy can release, that traumatic energy can come to the surface and be healed. So what the number one thing to love is the truth of being, right? The truth of who you are and the truth of who they are. Because that's where our salvation is. It isn't a negotiation. It isn't a truce. It's the discovery of what is absolutely true. And then letting that infect your entire life, let that contagion run through you. So that, and then, the program is only a problem when you're identified with it. The natural capacity of the human nervous system to become conditioned is essential. If we didn't have that capacity, we couldn't talk. We couldn't feed ourselves. We couldn't learn to do any of the things that have become automatic for us. So automatic, we even think they're trivial. But when you think about the capacity we have for language and dance and music and art and innovation and technology, when you think about all of that, it's absolutely miraculous. And this is all a result of the adaptive power of the nervous system. And the heart of that adaptive power is its capacity to make repetitive behaviors automatic so you don't have to think about them anymore. Very, very powerful. That's what conditioning is. The thing is though, that conditioning, which provides us all these this wonderful facility, can be conditioned in such a way that it while it keeps you safe at the time the conditioning gets put into place, it becomes dysfunctional later on. And that's what we're dealing with. So you can love the capacity for that, and that for our ability to become conditioned, to make behaviors automatic. And that love of that is a powerful energy to liberate those conditioned patterns that aren't serving you anymore. The only reason they're there is because they did serve you. Every negative behavior you have was a positive behavior at one time because it kept you safe in an environment that had some danger in it. That's why it's there. Now, that very same energy, later on when you're not in that environment and you spiritually mature and you're trying to get access to inner resources and other stuff that you need now, and you don't have access to it because this conditioning is blocking it, that's when we call it negative, and now we want to fight with it and we want to get rid of it and all. Don't worry, it's the same mechanism. And it will and just the way it responded to a sense of being threatened by the environment with this kind of conditioned response, if you give it a different environment of love and acceptance, it'll respond to that because that's what it does. It's 100% reactive. There's nothing proactive. It is completely reactive. It's nothing but a response mechanism to the environment. You, the creative energy, the creative consciousness at the center of it, that is proactive. That has vision. That has sight. That can see beyond. That can see things that aren't here yet, right? Then that vision has to make friends with the conditioning. So I think I'm getting at the spirit of your question here. So yeah, you're loving the capacity of the programming, and you're understanding why it's in the shape that it is. That's love. That's acceptance of it. And of course, that immediately conveys a sense of acceptance and love to it, which creates a different atmosphere in which that same mechanism begins to adapt differently. Is that clear now? River of Wellness? Or Julie? Yeah, Julie. Right? And the ego, all the ego is our sense of being, our consciousness, the sense of I am, identified with the conditioning. Instead of seeing it as just conditioned patterns in the nervous system, it becomes me. I'm not enough. Instead of this feeling that's running through me of not being enough because of something that happened to me, maybe consistently in childhood, I now think I'm not enough. I begin to believe that that is actually me. If we see conditioning as conditioning and consciousness as consciousness, the ego disappears. Because there's no identification. No identification, no ego. Now that doesn't happen in a flash. For pretty much anybody. A few people. There have been a few. Well, at least in one lifetime. There's been a few. Who knows what they went through beforehand? Because the veil between life and death is much thinner than people realize. So anyway, does that cover it for you, Julie? Very beautiful question. Kennedy says, hi from Kenya. Whoa, lovely. Hi. Wonderful to have so many. Oh, wow, that makes me feel wonderful. Jonathan says, I've felt moments of stillness, assuming that's the right path to self-realization. How do I step it up a level, even though there are no levels? What's your hurry? It's always the false sense of self, the ego, that's judging where it's at compared to some other place. All this means is that you're going into the stillness, you're feeling that, and there's a voice going, oh, how do we stay here? How do we get more of this? Don't pay attention to that voice. It's not doing you any good. All it's doing is trying to distract you from the stillness, which is the awake. That's it. That's all we care about. I mean, if you're still, if you're at peace, or you're happy, what more do you need? Everything else we seek in our life, including enlightenment, including really refined things like enlightenment, are to be happy. So if you're happy, what more is there to get? But your mind's not done yet, okay? It has spent years grinding along as a seeker. And it doesn't want to stop being the seeker. It doesn't know how to stop being the seeker. All the patterns have been put in place, so it's seeking. So all of a sudden now you're sitting there in the stillness and your mind's going, well, this is great. Well, what's next? Well, now what? How do we keep this? If you recognize that for what it is, you just let yourself sink back into that stillness, because that's it. It's nothing more than that. And there is no what's next. Nisargadatta referred to the tyranny of what's next. It's forever pulling you out of here. And all it means is that very unconsciously, very subtly, underneath that is this isn't it. This can't be it. And that's the seeking mind. That's the seeker voice. So you don't need to agree with it. Just smile, love, get it, and let that feeling of there must be something else, let it be there. I mean, it's all happening in awareness, right? And you're the awareness. So no matter what's happening, if your attention is forever going back to the fact that nothing can happen unless I'm aware of it. So no matter what's going on out here, how diverse and changeful it is, the awareness that is perceiving it is absolutely the same all the time. That's where you find your stability. That's where you find the place that never moves. And there's no need to step it up a level. That's the only level there is. Let that simply sink in and colonize your whole nervous system. And you'll find yourself living that truth permanently in the now. Julie says, is that Julie? Were you? River Walsh, Julie, right. Just would also like to mention on low self-esteem that I could really relate to what you were saying about when not responding to the fight, when experiencing trauma, and then this becomes repressed. Yes. And then when it becomes repressed, and then there's thoughts that come up and identification, all sorts of things get laid on top of it, and before you know it, you have an image of yourself with low self-esteem. And it's just an image in the mind. That's all it is. None of it's real. It's a reactive pattern set up because you were traumatized. And this is the nature of our lives. David Smith says, no JK. Okay, hold on. David Smith, hi, no JK. Not sure what that means. Remington, thanks GP. Done asking questions. I'll keep working on moving into it. Melt into it. Melt into it. Don't move in it like it's a place you have to go. Remember, we're discovering what's true about yourself. And you don't need to go someplace to discover what's true about yourself, because it's the truth about you right here and right now. So, yes, that truth sinks in and begins to take over more and more of the functioning of the system. But it doesn't become more true when it does that. The recognition that this is the truth is the power behind it. Catherine says, hi GP, the teaching is also part of the dance, right? There's just life and no one to live it. Nothing to seek. We could just sit in silence until the source reveals itself to itself. Yes, that's actually very true. And that's the primary practice of Soto Zen. It is very passive. It is just sitting. Vipassana is very similar to that. Mindfulness and the like. It's an extremely passive where you're just simply being yourself. And that will eventually completely illuminate the entirety of consciousness, and you will discover that it is Source recognizing itself as Source. Not you recognizing yourself as Source. That is the you think you are. But the awareness recognizing itself, and that what this thought of I was identified with simply doesn't exist. There's nothing there. And yes, the teaching, the questions and answers are both arising from the same place. Right? I mean, I'm not just standing here saying stuff, right? Everything that's coming up in me is in response to the question, right? So the same energy from which the question emerges, the answer emerges. Because on that level, at the only level really there is, we are one. And so it is it's a self-unfoldment. It's a self-realization. It's a self-recognition. There is just life and no one to live it. Boy, I wish you could really get that to sink in. It's true. Life, if you look at the entirety of life, you find that you can't separate one thing from another. I can't separate my lungs from the trees. Right? If my lungs breathe out what they breathe in, and they breathe out what I breathe in. So there's just this constant flow and interchange of energy. So where does one part of life and another part begin? The the seeing it as distinct element, there's this tree over here and me here, is an illusion. That's the delusion of a separate self. There is one single functioning, one single beingness, one single being. And the most subtle perception of all is when we see that that entire functioning in its oneness and its diversity is all happening on the screen of awareness, and that awareness is more subtle than all of life itself. That life is the dynamic aspect of consciousness. Life is the expression of awareness. It's what awareness is aware of, but it's not that it exists separate from the awareness. Awareness pondering itself creates the diversity of the universe. Just ponder that. Just ponder that deeply in your heart. Awareness is simply pondering itself. And when it ponders itself, the universe appears. And that universe is nothing but the awareness, its own self-image, which means it's made of it. It appears to it, it appears in it, and it's made of it. It's all consciousness, and there's nothing else. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Back there. So, yes, you could say there's no one really living life, right? Life is living itself. And the sense that there's me and my life is an illusion. That's the ego. That's the sense of a separate self. And it's not real. There's nobody there. What do you think about Tony Parsons' radical approach? Well, I disagree with how Tony. There's many teachers that take that strict absolutist Advaita approach. I don't find it. It doesn't appeal to me. It's not the lineage that I'm from, of Papaji and Ramana and Muji, which is my lineage. It's not the lineage. That's not how Zen does it. All of the teachers that I really admire and respect don't do it that way. Is it the wrong way? I don't know. It's never appealed to me. So I have to kind of leave it at that. I would just recommend that, if somebody's drawn to that teaching, to get from it everything that you can. If it takes you all the way, wonderful. And if it doesn't, you look elsewhere. I'm just always looking for my heart. What moves my heart? More than just the precision of the mind. And it's, probably one of the biggest discoveries for me was the revelation in Zen that you could as easily get stuck in the absolute as you can in the relative. Right? And again, I like to use the example of the koan that was created by Satsang, who was a Zen master from Korea. And the koan goes like this. He takes a stick and he bangs it on the ground. Right? And makes a big whack. And he says, stick and sound, same or different? If you tell me they're different, I will hit you 30 times. If you tell me they're the same, I will still hit you 30 times. Now, quick, whack, stick and sound, same or different. What he's pointing at in that is, if I say all is one, there's nothing, I'm the only one here, nothing has to be done, nobody has to do anything, you're stuck in the absolute. Whack. Swan Song gives you the whack. You say, it's all diverse and everybody's here and, we're all individuals and, you got your thing and I got my thing, whack. Right? Now everything's different. Reality is this. It is both the same and different simultaneously. Right? It's a constant yin-yang. It's a constant appearing of absolute relative. You might say that the absolute is known in the relatives, that the universal is seen in the particular. That is completely inconceivable to the mind because it wants to have one side or the other. And usually a koan like that, people are jumping back and forth, back and forth, back, and that's what the mind does, because the mind is looking for a place to stand. But the whole point of that koan is to put you in a place where you can't. There is no place to stand. And that's when you let go. And that's when you see life as a flow, not as an object. It's not a thing. Even the absolute is not a thing. It is, you can only have an absolute in terms of a relative, right? And so it must be this. When I realized this, that my life changed forever. It was a blissful moment. The bliss went away, but after a while I realized that the wisdom of that never went away. It was crystal clear. And everything is a dance between the opposites without ever getting stuck anywhere in the little infinite loop. The moment I'm here and I take this position, this right, that's wrong, I have created a universe. But as long as I never take a position, I never take sides, I never identify with one over the other, I am eternally free. And that means that in any moment, the most appropriate can emerge, whether that be a totally relative thing, in which, case I get people coming to me and then we tap, right? There's nothing absolute or non-dual about tapping, or therapeutic things to relieve suffering. But when that's the need, that's what shows up. And other times, like with satsang, I'm much more going right to the heart of the absolute truth. But I'm not going to stay there. And if somebody gives me a question about the law of attraction or their suffering, I won't be throwing out something like, well, who's the one that's suffering? Unless they're ready to hear something like that, because that would be inappropriate. It would be cruel even, right? So this is freedom. Anywhere you get stuck, right? And I'm not saying that Tony Parsons or any of these other guys are. I don't know. I don't know the man, okay? All I know is that it is a real trap, and I know many who are stuck in the absolute. Oh, everything is the absolute, and the relative is denied as if it didn't exist at all. And it doesn't exist as an objective entity, but it does exist as the flow of life, as this flow of opposites. You are beyond. The transcendent is neither this nor that nor both nor neither. It is a completely indefinable, ineffable, indescribable, unknowable reality. And that's what you actually are. Pure awareness. Pure awareness is neither absolute nor relative. It perceives both the absolute and the relative, does it not? So if it's perceiving the absolute and the relative, well, it's even subtler, which means it's in a realm of complete namelessness and formlessness. It cannot be spoken. As it says, the very first page of the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. The Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. It's not the true name. So that which is aware of all opposites cannot possibly be described. And that, my friends, is you. Because it's you who are aware of all those opposites. Does that help you? Does that answer it? Tom Tom says, hello everyone. Hello Tom Tom. Sarah Sands. Hello Sarah. Oh, so glad you're here. I miss you. I miss your energy. Sarah Sands, what's happening with the yellow vests in France? Are the protests still going on? Oh, he's asking. Oh, say David Smith was asking Sarah. I thought maybe somebody was asking me. I don't really know. Sarah says, I just turned in my semester grade, so I think they're still protesting, but there are groups of counter-protesters. I don't know the details. I don't either. Yeah. Like many things that happen in our world, a grassroots movement grows up, and the powers that be immediately latch onto them and try to and pervert them, basically. The deceitful media and all the other stuff. I'm not a fan of media or the power structures of the whole world. They need to go. Let's see. Klesu, lovely to listen to the truth dancing on this windy, snowy afternoon. Yes, indeed. Been really loving all the snow of getting out here in Seattle. It's really been fun. Sally Dusik, our group will be looking at non-duality in the Sufi tradition this week. It seems to be expressed through devotion, drunk on love, seeing God everywhere, etc. It's such a different flavor of expressing this truth to Buddhist emptiness and Advaita. Love to hear your thoughts on the Sufi expression. Much appreciated, GP. Yeah, it's very, very true. When you read Rumi's love poems, he could be writing that poem to, a romantic lover. He could be writing it to God. There's such a beautiful energy about the Sufi, which does tend to be lacking. I think at heart I'm a Sufi, because there's just such a, although I've never really studied it, it's just such a heartfelt thing, and there's also, because the Sufi tradition grew out of relationship with God. God became elevated, rather than other places. It got reduced. It got reduced to a tribal God. But in that tradition, it didn't, and so there was a lot of energy and heart. The religious sentiment, the sentiment of devotion, is very much in that. So I totally agree with you. Take both. Again, both are needed. The way I do it, and the way I did when I did the retreat last year, was I teach it as a twofold path. There's the path of Vedanta, which is the path of precise knowing, of precise seeing, of discrimination, of just, the two-edged sort of truth, and nothing that isn't true gets through. But I also teach, and absolutely necessary on the other side, is the path of Tantra, which is the embodiment as life, as a regular human being in all of the aspects of it, embodying the seen truth. And that's you could call that the Sufi path as well, because that's what it is. If it's just, Advaita speak, right, and it's just and it stays there, there's a disconnect between our everyday earthy lives. And if it gets too wrapped up in absolutism of Advaita, it denies the existence of human life, that it's all an illusion. So just don't pay any attention to it. Buddha never said that. It's not an illusion. The illusion is what you hold about it. The reality of your human life is that it is the absolute. The experience you're having right now is the experience of consciousness. The only problem is that we think we're experiencing something objective to us, something that exists independently of consciousness. That's samsara. When that illusion is corrected and you see that what I'm experiencing is actually one with me, that becomes nirvana. That's when the whole thing collapses. Shankara said it to a bunch of pundits. It was common knowledge at the time amongst the Brahmins. This has been active in Hindu thought for a long time. Shankara says, the world is an illusion. And of course, the pundits all agree, yep, the world is an illusion, he said. Then he went on to say, only Brahma is real. Well, Brahma's, yes, of course, here. That's exactly the case. Only Brahma is real. Now, if you stop there, it becomes an absolutist thing. But he didn't stop there. He said, Brahma is the world. Shockwave amongst the people who were hearing him at the time, because they were used to the first two phrases. They didn't get the second two phrases. He was showing that it is an illusion to perceive separation. Once the illusion is gone, there's no sense of separation, but that doesn't mean the things go away. There's this blank emptiness. It means the things now become the face of God. You see the face of God everywhere. And that's a beautiful way to put it. That's the way the Sufis would put it. We could say, it's all myself, it's all being, it's all love. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I mean, there's a million different ways you can say it, but it becomes intimate then. It's not an abstract kind of experience. And then you would understand when Buddha would say something like, it both exists and does not exist. He did not make existence and non-existence as an absolute quality. It exists as an experience that is subjective to consciousness. It does not exist as a separate entity. The severing of that belief is the end of the illusion. And that doesn't mean everything goes away. As a matter of fact, everything gets liberated by that realization. Everything gets, even the person you think you are gets liberated. And your natural abilities get liberated. Everything begins to work the way it was intended, because now you see it for what it actually is. Consciousness made manifest, and not an object the consciousness is aware of, but consciousness aware of itself. Consciousness as essence, consciousness as form, it's this. It is not one or the other. It's not consciousness is the pure emptiness, and the forms are something else. The Heart Sutra, there's a reason it's called the Heart Sutra, right? The heart of the whole thing. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The emptiness, the mind gets wrapped up in, that it gets wrapped around the axle about, is nothingness. And that's a lot of what you might hear taught. It's emptiness, there's nothing there, it's oblivion, it's obscure, there's nothing. Nothing. And it's bogus. The emptiness is form. Form can only be known by emptiness. Form is the same as emptiness. You can't have one without the other. And then you move to the most transcendent place of all, the place that is beyond all of it, which sees both the emptiness and the form. Again, you end up in the land of the Tao, the unknowable, the unnameable, you can't even call it formless anymore, because it is form. It isn't form. It's right. Is this getting clear? This transcendent place in the middle has no boundaries whatsoever. It has no name. It has no identity. And yet everything, the entire manifest universe, appears to it. How's that, Sally? Looking forward to having another satsang with you guys at some point. David Smith. Sally Duke, basically bhakti yoga? Yeah, it is. Except bhakti yoga oftentimes doesn't have the same kind of non-dual transcendent essence to it. It's really very devotional. I find the Sufi to be, it's devotional, but it's also poetic. It's also very non-dual. It recognizes of all things. It deeply recognizes the oneness, but it takes an expression, a very different expression than it does in, say, Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta. Seeking Truth says, "Are we responsible for our actions?" Interesting question. On a relative level, yes, absolutely. You do something, you rob a 7-Eleven and you go to jail if you get caught, right? So yeah, there's, in the relative world, there's action and consequence, and we can't pretend that doesn't exist. If we do, we're really deceiving ourselves. And oftentimes people get so much into the absolute, and that can happen. I've seen non-dual teachers who, because there's no cause and effect. There's no, I'm not doing anything. Coercing their pretty young students to have sex with them. I mean, that's, and yet it's justified from that point of view, and it is condemned, and rightfully so. That's not it. That is not it at all. To see deeply where all action arises from, both the egoic action, which arises from our traumas and our conditioning, brings a wisdom and a healing atmosphere to those traumas, so that we're not merely acting out these old patterns. I mean, even the most horrendous crimes are. There were studies done of violent criminals in the prisons, and found that for every single one of them, the crime they had committed with somebody else had been done to them in one form or another, or somebody really close to them, and other kinds of abuse. So they're really acting out a pattern. They're acting out an energy unconsciously without actually realizing it. Are you responsible for it? Yeah, the consequences. They're sitting in jail. Are they the cause of it? Absolutely not. Right? We need to take seriously getting to the root of where the actions actually come from, that allow us to awaken to our inherent natural innocence and a very deep compassion that goes with it. And that will also allow us to see the way clear for the healing of those things, so someone can be reformed, so that the moral requirements will be met as well. Jesus completely transcended the laws and the rules of the Old Testament, and he even said that he was the fulfilling of the law. But he also said that not one bit of the law would be removed till it was all fulfilled. So again, we have to walk this path. If you take the absolute path, you in a crazy way, you'll end up justifying all sorts of behaviors that are simply unhealthy and and immoral. But you'll be able to judge them because, well, nobody's doing anything. Right? You'll be able to justify to defy them all. On the other hand, if you just go down the relative path, it's just nothing but the law and behavior control and struggle. And that's pretty much what the world is. I mean, God, how many laws do we have? Jeez, right? To cover every aspect of absolutely everything, right? If you get into the middle of this, you see both. And then there's a clarity of heart. And you get to the point where Jesus said, there's only two commandments: love God and your neighbor as yourself. And really, that's it. You don't need any of the others. Love God, the truth, the absolute, and your neighbor, the one you can see, touch, and feel, as yourself. Done. That's all you need. But you have to have both. A lot of people love God and then kill their neighbor. Right? I love God so much, I'm going to kill you, and hopefully, for whatever reason, right? And then, of course, there's the others that don't love God and they don't really care about anything. But I don't mean God as a person or as a being that's going to punish you. It's just the truth that God is love, and love is better than hate. Duh. So love God, love the truth, and love your neighbor as yourself. It all can come down to that. And I hope that answers your question. Tom, which is the time? 67 minutes. Okay. How to disidentify with the body. I'm aware of it, but still exists in me persistent the thought, feeling that I am limited to this body and dependent on it. How to truly know myself before the body? Well, you're absolutely right. The sense of identification of yourself as the body runs very deep. It's a deeply held pattern of behavior. It's a deeply held habit of thought. Not just you personally. Look around. The entire world believes it's true. I am the body. Somebody asked, when scientists want to study consciousness, what are they doing? They're measuring the brain. As I've said, looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking for the Mona Lisa in the paint. She's not in there. We're looking for the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in your iPod, right? It's not in there. But yet that's what we do. So that energy, that conviction, that I am the body, permeates culture. So you're running into it everywhere. So don't be concerned about the fact that these things are persisting. So now just take a step back. You are aware of the body. You're aware of all of the sensations of the body. The sensations aren't continual, are they? I mean, there does seem to be a constant flow of sensation, except when you're asleep. But the sensations are not the same. It's not one sensation is there. It's a flow. Sensation upon sensation upon sensation upon sensation, right? Like thought upon thought upon thought, feeling upon feeling upon feeling, right? That's what's actually happening. So you are sitting here in this place of awareness that is, at least relative to all this flow of thoughts and feelings and the like, is not moving. Now, all you know about the body is thought, feeling, and sensation. Another way you can approach this is to say, is to look at it and go, the sensations I know. Where's the body? You'll find that while the experience of sensation, what we call sensation, is undeniable, the belief that that's originating from some kind of physical object in the universe called a body is not provable. Can you find a body separate from the sensations? And this has got to be internal, your own subjective, looking at you. Not, well, there's a body over there, right? Well, but that means nothing, because that too is nothing but a sensation that you are experiencing. What's the origin of what you're calling sensations? If you look closely, you'll find that you cannot find a body. In fact, there isn't one. The body does not exist as an entity. It is consciousness experiencing in a particular quality of experience, which we call sensation. We call it sensation because we think it's part of the senses of the body, that the body is the source of them. We find the sensations, you can't find the body. Look for it, you won't be able to find it. And all of a sudden, you can just come back to this place where, oh, I am only experiencing sensation, that is consciousness. I'm experiencing condensation or modulations in consciousness, like waves. It doesn't have an external origin. I can't find an external origin. In my experience, there is no external origin, which means that I'm not the body because it doesn't exist. And I'm not these sensations because they're constantly coming and going, and I'm watching them come and go, so I'm not them. Thoughts come and go. I'm obviously not a thought, because if I was a thought, when the thought went, I'd go, and I'm not. I watch them come and go. I watch emotions come and go. What is it that's watching them come and go? Well, it must be something essentially different than them. And so you can say, oh, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my sensations, which is all I know to a body. Except this belief that there's this object out there somewhere that is producing thoughts, feelings, and sensation. I've never seen that object. Nobody's ever seen that object. Nobody can prove that it exists, because you'd have to step outside of your own perceptual world to see it independently of your perceptions, and you can't do that. So it's an assumption. It's a metaphysical assumption and not a scientific truth. Does that help? Oops, low battery on my phone. Does that help, Tom? Klesu says, but ultimately my creation, bound to expressive objectivity, created hostility. Oops, did I miss a beginning part of that, Klesu? I'm sorry if I did. Lovely listen to the truth on Sunday afternoon, but ultimately, not quite sure where that's coming from, my friend. It seems like there was part of this that did not get asked. But ultimately, yeah, it seems like there was something before that I haven't seen. Oh, and somebody actually donated some money to me. So thank you very much. It really does. It really does help. I just want to keep. If I had my way, I would do everything for free. All my courses, everything. I look forward to a world where where we're free of the need for profit. We just take care of each other. It's coming. Spiral dynamics. Hello from France. I have the same problem because I think consciousness, the knower, the witness, etc., is just a concept in the brain, a chemical process. That is why I'm identified with the body. Yeah, that's what everybody thinks it is. And the thing is that you can't put that. You can't put, if consciousness exists independently of the body. Right. Let's just say it's a different substance altogether. That means it cannot be verified through the material model. The material model has to assume that consciousness is simply a function of the brain, and that's exactly what it assumes. So the way we have to approach it in order to go beyond that is that we have to, because it's an assumption. It's the inevitable assumption of matter, and it can't look at something else. It can't say there's something other than matter called consciousness. But I can. I'm not bound by that material model. I'm looking at it from the best vantage point anybody could possibly have to make a scientific observation. I'm it. I am consciousness looking outward. There's nothing gives me more authority for speaking about the nature of consciousness than the fact I'm it. Right? Now, science categorically denies subjective experience, subjective conclusions. Right? Because it has to have everything on an objective model. That's the only way it knows how to hold on to anything. This isn't objective. You cannot. So you read completely subjective experience to an objective functioning of material processes. Look closely, folks. The quality of the experience of consciousness does not resemble at all the quality of the experience of matter. Look through the entire hierarchy of matter and material structures. You cannot find anything that would give any indication of the possibility even of consciousness, let alone the actual experience of it. That's my granddaughter. I think she's protesting that it's nap time. It can take some rigor. It can take the same kind of scientific rigor that the scientists do, which I applaud. That kind of discipline and precise looking at it. Look. You have to look until you see, till you become convinced that consciousness exists independently of the body. And it really is very, very simple. We assume that the body exists and that consciousness. I have just as much authority for saying I exist and that the body exists inside of me. I experience this all inside of myself. Every night I go to bed, as do you, and we have dreams. And in that dream, you have a different body, different people, different experience, all of it. Right? You wake up in the morning, none of it was real. It was all subjective. There was no matter there. There was no functioning there. There was no body there. Right? Every night you experience it. Well, yeah, that's a dream. We could do that. What's the difference? Really? What's the difference? I can't find any way of proving that all experience isn't subjective. I cannot find any way of proving that experience is there's a body here and something out there and I'm having an experience. That actually dawned on me when I was 17 years old, and it changed my life forever. I couldn't prove it. It's like, oh, this could be a dream. I didn't know it at the time. I had no former education on this subject or anything. It just spontaneously appeared, and I could not find proof positive that what I was experiencing, in fact, it existed independently of my experiencing. The entire thing could have been happening as a dream. And that just plunged right into my heart, and I was never the same again. And I looked and finally eventually became convinced of exactly the opposite, that it's totally subjective, that life is but a dream, that everything you're experiencing is a dream. even the one you think you are in the dream, is in the dream. And the true one, the one, is completely unknown in the dream. You don't wake up. The dreamer wakes up. Is this at all helpful, spiral dynamics? Nigel, hi G, I have a job interview tomorrow. Very good. And will be anxious. I want to use the opportunity to practice non-duality. Any tips? The way I always approach that is to simply, if you make the anxiousness a problem you have to fix, you have created a conflict. You have created the duality, right? Anxiety, bad. Me, good. Need to get rid of this in order that you've created the duality that makes it a conflict. But if I see this as simply an aspect of the nervous system, it wants to protect me, it's on my side, it's going to help me. That sense of anxiousness is a heightened sense of focus. When you're in that interview, you're not thinking about what you're going to have for dinner tonight. You're not thinking about the shoelace that broke. Right? You're not thinking about anything. You're totally present. That feeling of heightened awareness can feel like an anxiousness inside. Yes, it can be for some people. It's extreme that it shuts them down, but that's actually kind of rare. So all I just did was I reading something that is in conflict with you to something that's actually a natural part of your system. Boom. The duality has faded. There is now a non-dual. Remember, non-dual is not this and that doesn't exist. Non-dual is this. That both this and the emptiness and the somethingness are a continuum. They are two sides of the same ineffable coin. So you're seeking to find a place and to benefit. And they're seeking exactly the same thing. And so you're both wanting the same thing, and you're there to help each other decide whether or not this is the review. You think of the interview as a date. As a date where nobody has to pick up the check. And so if you can make every feeling okay, then anxiousness isn't a problem anymore. It's only if there's a fear that the anxiousness, I'm not going to be able to think clearly. I'm going to say dumb things. I'm not going to know what to do. I'm going to, right? All of that is the mind's narrative about this feeling. So just be with the feeling. Think of yourself. You could even do it right now. Just picture yourself sitting there in the office, talking to them, right? And if just welcome it. Yes, wonderful. And you can even say, yeah, all the things. Okay, well, what if it goes right? What if it goes it's perfect? What if it goes absolutely ideal? What would it feel like then? And all of a sudden you have a different set of feelings, not anxiousness. I'll tell you a true story. Long time ago, back in the 80s, I had an interview. I was a consultant. I never actually worked for anybody since 1984. I was hired as a consultant, and it was the worst interview I'd ever had in my life. The guy was a stone face. He said nothing, gave me absolutely nothing to work with. I answered the questions. Worst interview of my life. I walked away and said, well, that's not going to happen. A couple days later, I get the call. In fact, it happened. It was the worst job ever. I got the job. I was there for a while, actually. And about a year after it, he asked me to head the biggest project going on anywhere in the world at the time, which was the hooking up of PCs to mainframe computers, which was brand new. Nobody had ever done it. And he asked me if I could figure out how to do it. And then he told me about that interview. He said, The only reason I hired you is because I couldn't find anybody else. A year later, he handed me the keys to the car, and it was a huge project. It won awards. It was a really big deal. So, my friend, you have no idea how things are going to go, and that's really part of the wonderful, wonderful fun of life. It's part of the mystery of it and the sweetness of it. Love him, love you, love the opportunity, love the anxiousness, love it all. And believe me, magic will happen. Let me know how it goes, Nigel. Thank you. Let's see. Tom. One sentence in Polish to Eva. Okay. All right. I'm not going to try to translate Polish today. Klesu, creative process. Catherine says, that's great. Thank you for your reply. Very insightful. Good. Glad it worked. TG, maybe TY, TG. Katemo. Errol says, GP, how does presence and not self relate? Well, presence is the self. In Buddhism they talk about no self, and what they're referring to is not that you don't exist. Buddha was actually accused of that, of nihilism, right? Which is also a statement you'll hear some Advaita people saying. That's not what he meant. When he was talking about no self, we project self onto the body. The body is just a functioning of cells. All sorts of very complex functions of cells. Each one of those cells, in fact, is a living being in and of itself. At one time, it was living out in the ocean, right? Cells got together, they grouped together, they formed little organisms, then bigger organisms, and organs, and on and on it went. So what you're seeing here is this beautifully coordinated, all these little tiny elements. But if you look closely, there's no center to it. You can't find a self. Right? This is just look and see. And that's what Buddha was referring to when he said there's no self. He said there's a road. There's a walking on the road, but there's no traveler. Right? The self that is projected on the functioning of the form. So we think, that's a person. And in fact, there's no person there. The self that is projecting its selfness is consciousness, self-awareness, the awareness of being. And that's self-evident too. But that's not a self in the sense that it is a person. It is a self that is presence. It is simply formless presence. It's absolutely real. Obviously you're real. You know you exist, right? But there's that tendency for that presence, which is what we are, to identify with the body and therefore think that it is a person. The body has no person. It has no center. Biology will tell you that. The biology talks about self-organizing systems, that even the brain, you can't find you in the brain. The various functions that gets brain, the eye, something comes in the eye, gets responded to in one place, something in another place. There's no center where it's all coming together, right? There's some filters and things that it goes through, but there's no self there. There's only functioning. It's like a robot. It can be a perfect replica of a human being, but there's no body there. There's no self there, right? So the sense of self is presence. It is beingness. It is that innate, intuitive, subjective knowing that I am. That sense of I am, projecting itself upon the body, saying I am the body, now gives the body the illusion of a self that it doesn't actually have. It starts believing that there's a self, a finite self, a bounded self, a formed self. No such thing exists. It is a projection. It is all a projection of your mind. You are the formless presence. So your sense of self begins to withdraw from the body, and you see there's no self there. But there is a sense of self that you have. That sense of self is not coming from the body. It is inherent, it is innate, it is self-existent, it is self-luminous, and it is what you are. And so let the sense of I am, become identified with simply presence. I'm here. That's it. As what? I may not even know yet, but I'm here. I am. That's a fact. But I'm not the body. I'm not even in the body. There is no self in the body. Does that help for the whole self and thing? Sunil says, I totally agree with you, G, about the corrupt media and power structures. It used to make me mad, so I realized they were being exposed and challenged on a wider scale. Yeah. I mean, we have. I'm not one for saying stick your head in the sand. There's enormous amount of mental manipulation, propaganda all over the place. America's the worst of it now. Completely corrupt on every single level, but it's being seen. There's no sense in hiding away from it. This is what the egoic mind does. This is what you get with the ego, right? Sorry, there's no discount here, right? You don't get a special deal, right? This is what you get. The identification with the body that makes the ego gives you the world that we're living in. There's no way out of it except to come to understand that you're not your body, you are not the ego, you are not your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. You are none of those things, and the realization of that dissolves the ego and awakens the true love and compassion that is humanity's birthright. And all of the systems, and I don't care what system you talk, socialism, communism, capitalism, every bit of religion, they are all created by the ego. All of those systems would crumble if they actually met a real human being. Make you into the systems. They are all a reflection of the ego. They're all crumbling. And we will have a very different world in the not too distant future. Kathleen says, GP, you have a Sufi heart. It's evident in your poetry. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen. The Sufis just do have a beautiful, warm feeling. Jonathan says, thanks, GP. Beautiful start to a Monday morning. Work is calling. Bye. Oh, Jonathan, you're way over there, I guess. Yeah. Somewhere where it's already morning. So where I am, it's only, 2 in the afternoon? It's an hour and a half, right? So I started 1, so it's like 2:30. Yeah. Contemporary classical guitar by Laird says. You asked me. Yeah, I saw this question on the video regarding non-dualism versus Kashmir Shaivism. Is there a net gain or loss if they at some point in my life have overlapped? 35 years ago, I experienced an initiation by a famous Guru Muktanda with Shadapat. Wonderful. All teaching, all practices, all forms are provisional. They are temporary. None of them are absolute. I'm not well versed enough on Kashmir Shaivism to be able to actually comment on it. A little bit of exposure to it, but certainly not enough for me to make some kind of a comment. What I do know is this: that every teaching, even Buddhist teachings, are temporary and provisional. They're a concession to the separate self until an awakening has gotten enough roots that they're no longer needed. And there's different levels of teaching for different levels of consciousness to bring people to that next level. Once a teaching that is designed to get you here has got you there, you don't need it anymore. You don't hold on to it. Once the fire is stirred, you can throw the stick that stirred the fire into the fire because you don't need that anymore. And then the next level teaching emerges for you. whatever that might be. And of course, along the border, there's overlap. And it's not like one really gets completely thrown out. You find that the higher teaching absorbs the lesser, and you have a bigger context now in which it's all being seen. And you see that there's this beautiful, pure, perfect thread that's been running through the entire thing. And while the expression of that thread has been different, the costume it's where it's been different, that the thread itself is pure truth, the pure prajna paramita, the ultimate wisdom, which is not a teaching. It is gone completely beyond. That's prajna paramita. It is then the prajna paramita mantra, which is gone beyond, gone completely beyond all teaching, all thoughts, all ideas, all concepts, all dependencies, all beliefs, all assumptions, gone beyond all of it, and you are at pure, infinite, boundless, harmonious being. So there's no problem with the overlap. There's no problem with your initiation. There's no problem with what you've experienced. All experience contributes. If you are open and receptive and your heart is open to truth, all experience will guide you closer to truth. But no experience is the truth. I don't care what form it takes. No teaching is the absolute. Not mine, for sure. Not Buddha's, not Christ. No teaching is absolute. The absolute is you. All teaching is simply to point you to yourself, to the uncostumed, unclothed truth, which is the pure reality of your being. Does it help you there, Laird? Clesu says, you're describing my experience. Well, good. Yay. Tom, yes. I understand what you're saying. You mean there is no solid physical thing, only awareness of sensations. I will consider this. Thank you very much. Yes. No solid physical things. And you can verify that. Now, your mind's going to freak out a little bit because it's just so used to, there must be a body there. It just assumes there's a body. But when you see and you can't find the body, at first your mind's going to be a little bit crazy about it. So, well, it's got to be there. It must be there. And I say this to people, and I had somebody, I even said that somebody had made one of those scathing video that I did, and I made a comment back to that effect, and he just went off like a rocket. The idea that the body might just be a concept and not actually a real solid thing, nothing but doubt. But what has to happen in order for the truth of this to sink in is that we have to become more confident in and more trusting of our perceptions than of what we've been taught. Our experience must become the litmus paper by which the truth of something is judged. Our experience, not somebody's theory, not what somebody told you is true, this is the way it actually is. That's all hearsay. That's not what you experience. You never experience a body, ever. You experience thought, feeling, and sensation. You assume that there's a body that is causing those, but you never experience the body. Now, eventually, if there's something I believe in it, but I never experience it, I have to eventually say, you know what? It doesn't exist. It's a mistake. It's an illusion. It's samsara. It doesn't exist. What does exist? Well, this I experience. So what's the actual nature of sensation, of emotion, of thought? And then you look closer and you find that the real experience of them, not existing independently of my consciousness, that they are consciousness. That what I'm actually experiencing, what I call sensation, emotion, and thought, is in fact simply different qualities of consciousness, the singularity of consciousness. It is the rich diversity of consciousness in its manifest form. But it's consciousness. It's not matter, it's not an object, it's not a body. And that's my actual experience. Come to trust your experience, you'll all be sages. Because that's what the sage does. It recognizes that the truth of their experience is true, and that the theories about what are being experienced are not. Sunil. Hello, Sunil again. I read about Ramana's to know God is to be God. Knowing through the mind is not stable, as it's always changing. But being, or God, is always here, whatever the experience. That is liberating for me. Beautiful. Yes, absolutely true. To know God is to be God. If I know God like one thing knows another, in the duality. But if I know God as the sense of being, where I realize that my sense of existence is what has been called God, then the knowing of God is the being of God. And that's not insolent. That is not blasphemous. That's not the ego claiming to be God. It is the ego disappearing in the presence of the allness of God. And you see that that is all there has ever been. That there's only always been one mind, one consciousness, one beingness. And that the ego is simply a thought that bubbled up on the surface of that and temporarily imagine itself to be somebody. Completely, even all of that, the ego and all of those patterns of thoughts are being viewed. The place it's being viewed from is the I am. Or if you like, you could call that from the place of God. Spiral Dynamics says, thank you, GP. Sean says, hey, G, what's up? Hey, Sean. Patang says, now I see GP stands for Grandpa. Well, I was GP before I was a Grandpa, but hey, if the shoe fits, right? That's very funny. So you really want to know, GP is simply my initials. My name is Gregory Paul Walsh. Just got shortened to GP. It makes for a better URL. Super Tidget. Hey GP, I have a question. How do I enjoy and accept the present moment? It feels so meaningless. Even if I understand it is a projection of my mind, I can't find a perspective in which it's positive. Well, let's start with accepting the current moment as it is. And part of the accepting the current moment as accepting the fact that you can't accept the current moment as it is, right? That energy's there too. So there's a desire to really be allowing and loving and embracing this current moment. And there's a resistance to that. There's an energy that doesn't want to do that. The energy that wants this moment to be different than it is. So accept that too. Recognize that it's there. I don't mean like, oh, it's okay. I don't mean resignation. I mean just a recognition of the obvious. You know, oh, that's there too. Okay, boom, bring that into the picture. Bring that into the sphere. You go, oh, that's there too. There's this desire there. There's this desire. There's this resistance. All of that is being seen from here. All of that is being seen. All of that is appearing on the screen of your consciousness. Now we start with that. So we don't have to try to turn it into something, right? We have to try to make it positive. We want to discover the reality, right? You won't have to try to make it positive. Now, once you're allowing that to happen, you can then start to discriminate. You can begin to distinguish the feelings that are going on, the circumstances, from the narrative about that. Oh, it's not positive, therefore I'm not experiencing. God, is really uncomfortable. I don't like it. How do I get rid of this? I wonder what I could do. I wonder where it came from in studying the past. Notice that all of those are just patterns of thought reacting to what in fact in this moment is a simple feeling. If we get back to the pure feeling, right, we can wind our way back through the elaborateness of the story. When I say to simply allow things to be there as they are, I don't mean allow the story to be the way it is, because the story is not true. The story is an attempt to interpret this moment. And the mind is saying this moment is meaningless. Well, it's not true. It obviously has a lot of meaning, or you wouldn't be bringing it up to me. What you're experiencing has meaning. Maybe the meaning is simply it's uncomfortable, but it's not meaningless. And of course, you are seeking meaning. And by seeking meaning, what I really mean, you're seeking love. You're seeking to embrace this. You're seeking to see it as something valuable and not just this empty stuff. I don't, I always like to just, push the pure awareness thing because for some people that can seem to be very cool. Embrace what you're feeling. It's very simple. Embrace what you're feeling. Let yourself feel it, all of it, including the resistance to feeling it. That's a space. That's a very open, beautiful space in which healing can take place, in which transformation can take place. If I'm in resistance, if I identify with the resistance, I make a conflict. But if I see the resistance too is just part of the energetic pattern, and I step back from that, well, I've embraced all of it. And of course, the resistance will begin to lose some of its strength because there's no identification with it anymore. Let me see if I'm covering the question enough. All right. So and then just notice that the actual experience you're having, there's sensations, there's emotions, and there's thoughts, that the thought patterns tend to forming are projecting on the actual experience a story that's unpleasant. It's meaningless. It's not fun. I want to get rid of it. And just know, I see that's part of this too. That's part of the way the mind functions. But I don't have to go along with it. I don't have to go along with the assumption, I got to find a way out of this. No, I don't. I can be totally present in it. I can be happy right where I am. I can be content right where I am. I can be aware of myself as pure consciousness right here, right where I am. Because obviously, all of this is happening to consciousness. The resistance, the story, all of it is happening right here in front of me. So obviously, I'm bigger than all of it. I'm subtler than all of it. I'm more than all of it. Self-evident, becomes self-evident. And just keep working with that. But remember, it is the perception, it is the non-dual. You're seeing that it's a perspective, that it's a projection, but it's also the other side, the tantric side, the Sufi side, where it's heart, where you're simply allowing the uncomfortable to be. You're simply allowing yourself to feel what you actually are feeling, even though in the moment it's not comfortable. And remember, all our traumas were caused because we were not acceptable as we were. You expressed yourself, and it met with the disapproval of the tribe. You were not okay. Right? All I'm doing is inviting you to give yourself what you didn't get before, to give yourself the energy that had you gotten it then, you wouldn't have been traumatized in the first place. And that is, I accept what I'm feeling in this moment, completely and totally. I even accept the resistance I have to accepting it. All of it. Just no bound, no limits, nothing off limits. And can you feel, even when we're talking, can you feel how the space begins to open? Because it's the open acceptingness of the heart. And it's beautiful. You can think of the Vedanta as the masculine approach, the precision, the accuracy, the pinpoint precision, and all of that. But the tantric approach is the feminine. It's the open. It's the curvaceous. It's the flow. It's the receiving. It's the mother love. It's the mother goddess. The Prajnaparamita, the goddess of wisdom, is a goddess, Kanzeon in the Asian tradition, and the goddess of compassion. It's a feminine energy, and with that kind of Nothing untoward, nothing that isn't positive can stand. It eventually just gets transmuted into the most meaningful thing. And the most meaningful thing, of course, is the recognition of who you are and always have been. That's the ultimate thing, and that's really all we want, isn't it? To be loved for who we actually are. I ask because I desire love and bliss, but I understand their pressing and craving for them gives suffering. So, yeah, beautiful. We all desire love and bliss, right? The pressing and the craving comes from the underlying belief that I'm lacking it. So we need to learn to see that we're not lacking it, that it's inherent in us. And even if it doesn't appear like it is out there, we can develop the inner vision that sees it where the eye cannot. Because without that, the desire, the natural desire for love and bliss, which is pure human, arises without suffering. Because there's no sense of lack in it. If a desire arises and runs into an environment of lack, it creates suffering, strain, grasping. I gotta have this, I gotta have this. But if that same desire arises in an atmosphere of acceptance and a feeling of abundance, the desire becomes not the need to get something, but the need to give something. It becomes the actual substance of what on one hand would be sought. It becomes your capacity to give a gift. It becomes the creative impulse. It becomes the birth of a new life. Can you see that? Can you see the difference? Can you see how that works? It's all the atmosphere in which the desire arises. The desires are always pure. They're always impersonal. Every desire, your desire for love and bliss is not a personal possession. It's universal. It is the nature of life. And therefore, it's a universal desire arising in you with universal power. So meet it as if you are meeting, the ambassador from Arcturian or something like that, right? You're meeting with an enormous gift that is coming, and then just learn to work through all of the beliefs we have about lack, and all the beliefs we have about lack arise from the sense of being a separate self, finite, limited, right? If I identify with the body, I become a separate self, and now lack for me seems like it's real, but it's not. And every desire you feel is arising out of the presence of it. It is arising out of the abundance of it. It is not desire in the sense of it needs something. The only thing it needs is to express itself, and the desire is always the first appearing of that expression. Tom. Funny and frustrating thing is that every day I have to start contemplation from the beginning. I am and I am aware. If I omit this from the morning, my day can go on and I forget myself. Well, then don't omit it. Pretty simple advice. It will, well, I don't want to be flippant about it, because anytime during the day, remind yourself, right? I'm sure you do, right? If you start your day that way, you've kind of set a groove, right? Which is great. Go ahead and do it. Keep doing it. That's what mantras are for. That's what morning meditation is for. You are consciously creating of truth, because you are the truth, creating an atmosphere of truth. So what you are doing is simply creating the world that you're in. And if you start with, I am aware, I mean, where better place to start? I mean, that's it. That's the most fundamental place. And let everything else grow out of that. It doesn't mean that there's just nothing but this blank, I'm aware, all day long. It means that the identification as awareness means everything now is free to arise within awareness, right? And including a sense of forgetting. That can arise too, right? Because you're aware of that too, right? There's nothing you're not aware of. But awareness isn't attention. It isn't what you happen to be focused on, because it's much more subtle than that. Because even the focus of your attention is happening within your awareness. Awareness is this It's empty. It's not nothing. It's not void. It's just empty of anything that would limit it, define it, constrain it. Fullest of the subtle. It is the God particle, you might say. It's subtler than the Higgs boson, right? Let's see. Namaskar from Bogdan in Kelowna, BC. Well, hello. Sunil says, that's true about not knowing the outcome of our actions. I was judging myself for an overexcited response to a woman's sexy advances via text. I got down about it thinking I blew it. It's still on. Right. Yeah, I mean, but I'm happy for you. Great. It's a wonderful thing. It's one of the sweetnesses of being human is this kind of thing. And it never gets old, by the way. Yeah, and so you when things like that come up, again, we often say, it's so subtle, this sense of lack, this sense of inadequacy, and I've got to do it right, and I'm going to blow it. All of that is the nervous system simply trying to protect you from rejection, and we all get rejected in life. I'm going to go through this whether I get rejected or not, because there's only one way to not get rejected, and that's to make myself available so that I can. It sends a very clear message to the nervous system, and it will start helping you. It will start opening up. Remember, the nervous system, because its dominant energy is safety, it always picks the strategy that has the most guarantee of safety. And for most of us, especially when you're kids, the best guarantee of safety is to simply shut you down. If you don't try, of course, you can't succeed either. And we learn this as we get older. But if you look at it strictly from the point of the survival and safety mechanism in the nervous system, it's a perfect strategy. Because it's objective. The objective of that aspect of ourselves, which is basically the first chakra, tribal stuff, the whole objective of it is to keep you safe. From its point of view, nothing else matters, right? Get really clear about this. It doesn't care about freedom. It doesn't care about love. It doesn't care about even prosperity, right? It doesn't care about creative expression. It doesn't care about vision. It doesn't care about God. It doesn't care about anything unless it directly relates to safety. So if it can completely shut you down and keep you out, it is regarded as the potential for danger. It has done its job. And of course, these kind of patterns get put in place with that level of extremity to them when we're too young to question them. And so now you get older, you want more freedom, but it's saying no, because it doesn't care about freedom. But if you realize that, then you can begin to work with that energy. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. It's just a very, very aggressive friend. It's just an overzealous friend. And so the reconciliation between you and that energy is that you're not trying to stop it from keeping you safe, but you're simply saying, could we find a better way to do, a different way to do it? Is it possible for me to be both safe and free? And even asking that question, you'll find this energetic kind of, I never thought of that. Your nervous system is quite malleable. It's quite flexible. It's not stuck anywhere. But we have to understand to approach it with compassion. And when we do that, it becomes quite malleable. Anything what it is. You cannot system embrace freedom. It won't do it. Nor can you make the freedom system embrace safety. It won't do it. So they're two very different energies. Both of them are needed, and we need to do this. My little symbol that I keep doing all the time. It is a flow between these different polar energies that make up the totality of the human being. Is that clear? Hadao, I can't really quite read this. I don't have my glasses. You see, I'm squinting. Hi, GP. It is said that one's freedom lies free to fulfill the need of the moment, to obey the necessity of the situation. Do what one likes is bondage. While being free to do what one must, what's right is freedom. I wasn't sure what Nisargadatta means by that. Does this relate to the meaning of the Zen koan you talked about earlier? Thank you, GP. Love you. Oh, that was Larry. Freedom is being yourself. And when you are free, when you're not stuck in an agenda, which means when you're not stuck in a position, so that this is position is what I am and those aren't. When you're able to move through positions and postures, you become extremely creative and extremely flexible, and you are always showing up, because you show up in every situation without an agenda. You are actually the most creative and versatile and useful tool in the room, because you can bring the energy the room needs because you've got no agenda. You've got no restrictions on you. That's freedom. Now we have freedom. We have desires that come up. You have the freedom to allow that desire to be fulfilled. You have the freedom to shut it off. If what you're talking about is the freedom to do whatever I feel like doing, and you have not done the proper spiritual inner work, you are quite in danger of giving a lot of room to your ego. And that never turns out well. So, when in the law of attraction and things like that, when you're attracting things, my big argument with the law of attraction and how it's taught is it does not teach any kind of character. It does not teach about the nature of the egoic mind. It just, you get what you want. It never questions that you. Well, we've all had the experience of getting something we wanted only to find that it made us miserable. We just couldn't wait to get rid of it. We sold it the next day on eBay, right? So to question, it's not that you can't attract these things into your life. It's not that you can't manifest the freedom to enjoy the fulfillment of desire. We simply have to know where they're originating from. The ego commandeers all desires to its own purpose, which robs both you and the desire from its fulfillment. It gives it a different reason. The reason a desire exists is to not fulfill an egoic need. It is to. So the spiritual rigor of being clear about impulse, is it coming from my true self, or is it coming from the egoic need? It'll always feel, sometimes even desperate, when it's arising from the ego. There'll be a graspiness about it. Now, believe me, that's not necessarily, you just don't condemn it, because sometimes it can be a graspiness that's come from a deep-seated trauma inside of us, something that we really did need, like when we were kids. We just didn't get the love we needed. And so there's still this feeling there of trying to get it. But that is the energy of the egoic mind. The only thing that's going to satisfy that is the genuine love, which is the genuine seeing of yourself as you actually are, at which point the graspingness can be relieved, and you'll no longer seek satisfaction outside of yourself. The ego is dissolved, and now desire has the freedom to fulfill itself, and wonderfully so, get into experience on all levels. Well, since my phone went dead and I have no idea what any more questions are, and it's 2 hours now, I guess this is a good time. I guess the power cut said it's time for us to leave it for now. So before we go, I'd just like you to all just quiet yourselves for a second. Let go of all the questions you had, whether they seem to have got answered or not. Believe me, if you came with an open heart, whatever questions you have got answered. They're not always answered directly. They're not always answered through words. But is what touches us and answers those questions. So now, as we bring this to a close, just let yourself sink into the place where there are no questions. You don't need to question your existence. It's self-evident. And if we don't need to even know what it is, right? We don't have a concept to form about it, because you are that. The experience of your existence is the whole of it. You don't need anything else. You don't need to even have a word for it. Although if you want a word for it, the best word is I, me, myself. It's who I am. We don't need any more thoughts than that. Believe me, the truth, the reality of your being will reveal everything you need to know exactly when you need to know it, and bring to you everything you need exactly when you need it. So, thank you all for being here. Please like and share. Those of you who feel so inclined to set the cost, you can go to gpwalsh.com/donate and make a donation of any size. Whatever, it all works for me. And